Hello and happy Advent from the chapel of the Cardinal Flaff Centre in Toronto. Some years ago now, while serving at St. Thomas More College in Saskatoon, I was in a conversation with a respected member of our faculty who had made a decision to take a professorship at a prominent American university. I discreetly suggested the possibility of enhancements to his position were he to stay, but he gently waved these aside. "You see, George," he said to me solemnly, "I've come to a point in my life where I feel the need to reinvent myself." I tend to think of that conversation as Advent approaches each year. In a certain sense, Advent presents the opportunity for us to reinvent ourselves. The concept implies an active self-evaluation undertaken in prayer, a calling to mind of the fundamental values according to which we live our lives, and a reorientation of our lives in light of this newly found self-awareness. Advent is a time to begin again, to reinvent ourselves. Not in any sense by denying our basic identity or our personal history, but by courageously admitting the darkness and brokenness of our lives in what is ultimately an act of hope. We acknowledge that we are powerless to redeem this darkness and brokenness through our own will alone, but that in Jesus Christ, discovered anew, we experience a re-energized communion of love with the triune God and with those with whom we live our lives. What is true for ourselves is true also for our congregation, for our apostolic ministry, and for our common life. Advent allows us the opportunity to imagine what might be if we began again. If we were to arrive in North America today, rather than in 1852, to serve in the Church's mission of education and evangelization, what would be the nature of our ministry? If we were similar in numbers, with fewer than 50 men under the age of 70 prepared for full-time ministry, where would we serve? How would we serve? Would we be concerned with taking responsibility for the governance and administration of schools and colleges? Would that be the best application of our priestly ministry in the church today? Or, being as well prepared as we are for the apostolate of Christian education, might we simply dedicate ourselves to teaching, preaching, and evangelizing in areas where the church finds it difficult to go, while forming in the faith those who govern and administer? Similarly, in our common life, would we establish our religious houses in exclusive relationships with individual institutions? Or would we establish central houses, fewer in number, where Basilians could serve in different ministries? The unity and diversity of Basilian apostolic ministry would then be evident to men who might consider the Basilian way of life, as would the joys and responsibilities and challenges of the common life. Our brothers in Mexico and Colombia can also imagine beginning again as an Advent exercise. Might there have been a greater focus on teaching in Mexico as a means of shaping our distinct identity there? Or a decision in Colombia to confine ourselves to, say, just 2 cities? We do not ask these questions in order to render judgments on either the past or the present, but so that we might imagine what new life could emerge by inviting the light of Christ into the areas of our lives in which we struggle the most. In a certain sense, one might say that the Advent saints reinvented themselves by virtue of God's spectacular intrusion into their lives. Zachariah and Elizabeth, Mary and Joseph, all underwent the most profound reassessment of the journey of faith on which God was calling them. What might be possible for us if God is born into our lives anew this Advent and Christmas season? A new way of looking at ourselves as individual Basilians? A new way of looking at our apostolic ministry and community life as a congregation? For this season of Advent, I invite you to imagine what might be possible if the incarnation of God in Jesus Christ changed our lives as we know them today. Thank you.